I wanna say something specifically to the people that watch these videos on YouTube, right? Which right now I think the number is like 760 or something like that, which is pretty good for no advertising or anything. This is just word of mouth, right? But I want to say something to that audience, and that is, if you've been following the videos, right now there's close to 400 talks there. And if you've been following those videos, you may, when you first start to listen to a video, we're already down the road a bit, in these talks, right? So I'm assuming a certain amount that you understand, when we're having these conversations. Well, that may not be the case for somebody that watches it on YouTube, okay? So this is for you people on YouTube that may not be familiar with how all this started or what the essence or the foundation of all this is. Yeah, this is a meditation class that I started teaching about, it's going on 7 years now, here at the YMCA. And in the beginning, I was just teaching basic mindfulness technique and, using guided meditation with Jack Kornfield and, pretty much standard stuff, mindfulness-based stress reduction stuff. But then, because of my involvement in the teaching experience and, my own practice and my own learning process, a natural process of evolution started to occur, and I found myself talking about meditation as a vehicle for self-realization, a vehicle for waking up. I started to, listen to and read a lot of material about that. And this really accelerated a process for me personally, right? And so that process became a process that I was sharing with the class and sharing in the talks that I was giving. And essentially, the bottom line is through my practices and through the learning process that I've been involved with for almost 50 years now, and through my teaching process and through my work as a psychologist and psychotherapist, I did experience an awakening, right? And in the Zen approach, that is the whole point. The practice of meditation is a practice intended to prepare you for awakening. And what does that mean? Well, awakening means that there's a specific experience in Zen called Kensho or Satori. It may be called Satori. And what it is that after a sufficient amount of practice in meditation and after a sufficient amount of understanding the teachings, that you are sufficiently prepared, right, to awaken. Now, the awakening is not something you can make happen. You can prepare yourself to be ready to wake up by taking on the teachings and the understandings and studying those teachings and understandings and practicing meditation the way it's meant to be done, which means consistency is everything with the practice, and then refining the practice. And if you're doing this over years, and if you're studying with all the teachers that are available today, and there are a lot of teachers, a lot of good teachers out there today, and a lot of good books and a lot of good videos, you have tremendous resources if you're interested in involving yourself in this process of awakening. It involves patience, right? Because you must establish a meditation practice, and that takes patience, right? So it involves patience. It involves diligence, which means that you have to make time every day to do some studying, right? Why? Because you're preparing the mind for evolution. You're preparing for this awakening experience. You could call it enlightenment. You could call it enlightenment. People think that that's a dirty word because it means so many things to so many people, but I'm not afraid of it. I define it in a very direct and simple way. Enlightenment is waking up. Enlightenment means that you have an experience of what you are. That's enlightenment. Kensho or Satori or enlightenment is a specific experience. Now, it's spoken of in many teachings as a sudden enlightenment, which does happen. But the more I'm involved with studying it and looking at my own experience of it and listening to other teachers, it seems to be the case that ordinarily it's a gradual process. it's important to understand that, because a lot of people read the accounts by Eckhart Tolle or read the accounts by Aji Shanti or other teachers that talk about the sudden awakening, and that's romantic and exciting. Everybody wants that. It's fireworks and wonderful stuff. You can put a sheet on and start carrying flowers around and all that other stuff, right? That's the way people thought about these things 20 or 30 years ago when people were studying these things, back when Alan Watts was the translator of Zen for the West. But the gradual process is one that's different. It's a process that involves a consistent making contact with the non-conceptual reality. And that's what meditation is in this way of understanding it. Every time you sit to meditate, right, you're making contact with the non-conceptual reality, which is the real reality, the authentic reality, the truth. You're making contact with the truth. What do I mean by that? I mean that when you practice meditation, you sit still, relax the body, and then you pay attention to the breath, and thoughts will come, and when they come, it moves your attention away from the breath to thinking, the thinking activity. The thinking activity is where the idea you have about who you are as a person exists, right? In thinking, when you're thinking, you're being a person. So when you move your attention away from that over to the awareness of the body breathing, right? It's very important to understand. When you do that, it's very important for you to be clear that there's no thinking happening now. That's why it doesn't last long, right? Because thinking is a habit, right? And so, and it's automatic, right? And so when you move your attention to awareness of the body breathing, it isn't long before a thought appears and attention goes back to the thought process. And so this is the initial practice of meditation. You're practicing developing your ability to maintain your attention, which means you can stay longer in the non-conceptual state, making contact with the truth. Now, this is interesting because when you're making contact with the truth, it is unusual because there's nothing happening. There's no thoughts happening, right? And when there's nothing happening, the mind gets restless. It wants something to happen, right? There's nothing happening. And yet, not only is there nothing happening, but when you're making contact with the truth, it's like, what truth? Do you know what I mean? There's no, it's almost uneasy, you know what I mean? Because I don't get it. You don't get what? Well, there's nothing to get. You're having a direct experience of reality, right? Now, why isn't there anything to get like there is in thinking, right? The reason there isn't anything to get is because when you make contact with the non-conceptual reality, you're making contact with something that you're already experiencing all the time. That's why there's no difference. That's why nothing happens, right? Because it's already happening. It's always happening, right? Well, if it's always happening, why is it that doesn't occur for us that way? Well, because you're preoccupied with thinking. You're busy. You're busy. You can't take the call because you're busy. You can't make contact with it for any length of time because your habit is to think. And your habit is to use thinking to be. Your habit is to use thinking as a way to be, to use thinking as a way to know, isn't it? Yeah, if something comes up that you don't understand, you think about it. You figure it out, right? But that only applies to that which is conceptual. And reality, right, the actual reality is non-conceptual, which means it doesn't give you any ability to function in a direct non-conceptual way. Thought does not give you ability to do that. In fact, thought is a very limiting way to live your life. Well, we don't realize that because everybody's living in thought, right? And so everybody's living in the same limited way. And so we don't see the limitations, right? But we suffer the limitations, right? We suffer the limitations because after using thought to live your life, you end up with headaches, you end up with physical problems, you end up with stress, you end up with pressure because of the limitations of thinking. You can't figure everything out. The truth, in fact, what you are can't be figured out, can't be known. What you are can't be known. It can be experienced, and it is being experienced all the time. It's just that you're preoccupied, so you're not aware of it. When you practice meditation, you're beginning to make contact with the truth of yourself, which is always already going on, right? And so it is transparent, it is formless, it doesn't show up as anything in particular. But when you're in that state of being, when you're in that state of awareness, right, you're making contact with reality. It's non-conceptual. It's the truth, right? And by practicing meditation over and over again, right, you begin, first of all, the seed gets planted when you first make contact with the direct experience of the truth. The seed is planted now. You've made contact with your real self. Now, once the seed is planted, every time you meditate, you're watering the seed. It's as simple as that. And if you water the seed, if you had a plant that you were taking care of, would you water it, once a week or whenever you, felt like it, whatever you remember? You wouldn't do that if you wanted the plant to grow, right? Sure. Same thing is true with this. You have to water the plant every single day. If you want the plant to bear fruit, you have to take care of it, right? And this is the process of meditation. So every single day you keep watering the seed, watering the seed. And if you do that, and those of you who have been practicing meditation here for a while now and been learning about these understandings, right? You've already experienced that by doing this consistently, it begins to sprout fruit. You begin to notice a difference. You are more awake more of the time. You do see more of what's happening than you did. You can actually get to a point where you can actually see your life. You can actually see your life, meaning that you have a view of the reality of your experience of being alive in which you are seeing it like you're not in it and you're looking at it. And you could see all the aspects of it. My life as a father, my life as a husband, my life as a teacher, my life, you can see all the aspects of it, and you can see the past of it and the future of it and the present of it. You can see your whole life like that. That view gives you access to the possibility of learning from life, learning how to live life, learning how to be with life, learning how to move with life so that the suffering ceases. Because the source of the suffering is resistance. The source of the suffering is confusion. The source of the suffering is rejecting life, rejecting what's going on, rejecting the way it is, right? We're doing this all day long. The mind produces rejection. The mind produces no's, not yeses. I don't like that. I don't want that, right? This is what I'm talking about. Resistance and rejecting. If you go through your life living in your head, living in a thought process, right, and constantly relating to what's going on, like I like it, I don't like it, I want it, I don't want it, it's good, it's bad, it's true, it's false, right? And of course you want to be smart, don't you, right? So you're going to pick the right choices, right? And by picking the right choices, you keep rejecting experiences, you keep rejecting what's going on, right? And whenever you reject what's going on, you suffer. Why? Because it's still going on and you're just not willing to experience it. So you suffer. You start to experience the experience of resistance. That experience could take many different forms. It could take the form of anxiety. It could take the form of depression. It could take the form of physical problems in the body, right? Why? Because you're not present to your own body, because you're not present to your own life, okay? One of the things that's very important about all this, as far as I'm concerned, as a psychologist, is that when you're practicing meditation, especially if you're doing it through an approach like Zen, right, where meditation is a vehicle for waking up, and you're studying the teachings, right, which is essential to study the teachings, right? When you study the teachings, it enhances the practice of meditation because you know more about what you're doing and how it works, okay? So that's very important to do. But when you study the teachings and you do the practices with consistency, you are in a psychotherapeutic process. You're in as a psychologist, this is very important and very relevant to me. In my work with my clients in my private practice, if the client is somebody who could learn to meditate, is available for understanding and appreciating the value of meditation, I always include that in the process. Why? Because the practice of meditation is the practice of waking up, practice of becoming more aware. And if you're more aware as you're living your life, you'll see how crazy you are. You'll notice when you're crazy. And if you see it and you notice it, not from inside the system, but from the view of awareness, then you can begin to do the work necessary to clean up your act. However, before you can actually do much to clean up your act, you have to have committed yourself to the consistency necessary and the learning process necessary to set yourself up for this awakening process, right? This awakening is an actual experience that you're having, a waking up. Like I said before, for most of it's a gradual experience, but if you pay attention, especially if you look back in time to if I look back in time to who I was 10 years ago, I have no idea who that guy is. If I could snap my fingers and be that guy for 5 minutes, you would say, who the hell's that? It would have no similarity to who I am now. Well, that's pretty dramatic, right?
Sure.
And if you're interested in psychotherapy and you want to change your life toward workability, you want to have your relationships be more functional, you want to be happier, you want to be more relaxed, you want to be healthier physically, right? Then this is the way to do it. This is the way to do it. So I really want to emphasize that, especially because one of the reasons that's important is because in the world today, there's more suffering than ever. Well, that's because there's more people to suffer, right? But there's also a lot of circumstances going on right now that lends itself to suffering. The politics that we're all dealing with, the financial situation, the pandemic, right? Global warming, war, right? All of it, is what we're dealing with every day, right? And the mental health situation for people, especially in this country, right? The richest country in the world, the most highly technical country in the world, and the sickest country on the planet. Right now in this country, depression and anxiety are off the chart, which means that a lot of people are taking a lot more drugs, right? Because most people can't afford psychotherapy. It's as simple as that. Even the insurance that most people have, right? Everybody's got to have medical insurance, but most people don't even look to see how much coverage they have for mental health. Why? Because it's something that we don't give much attention to, right? If we're uncomfortable, we reach for the pills. If we're uncomfortable, we reach for the bottle. If we're uncomfortable, we watch TV. Or if we're uncomfortable, we figure out a way to stimulate the system to get some pleasure out of it, like that, right? In the long run, that's not going to work. You're going to die younger, you're going to suffer a lot, right? You're going to be neurotic as hell, and you're going to make other people miserable. What kind of life is that, right? So this practice can be psychotherapeutic, and for people who can't afford therapy, don't have access to therapy, if you do this, it will work. It works. If you do this, it will work. You will get healthier. You will get happier. You will be more relaxed. You will discover tranquility. And if you do it with the consistency and the intention that can be part of this process, you can wake up. You can wake up. You can experience this awakening experience that I've experienced, and so I know it's real. I know it's possible. And it's not that weird or strange, it's available to all of us. In fact, it's so available to all of us that it's hard to understand, right? It's so available and so on, because you're already there, as I said earlier. You're already there. You're already awake, and you're already what you are, right? All you have to do is stop practicing not being that. And that's what you're doing all day long by paying attention and thinking about everything and depending on your interpretation of everything to be reality. Obviously, it's not reality, it's interpretation. And very often that interpretation is very distorted, very distorted. I mean, all you have to do is really take notice when you're really angry, right? Your perception closes down like this. The person you're talking to, right, that you may be relaxed, enjoying yourself with, sharing different things, right? All of a sudden they say something that pisses you off. The only thing you can see is this person is an enemy, or this person's threatening me, or I have to stop this, or I have to get in control. That's all you can see. 2 minutes ago, you were relaxed and enjoying the company of the person. This is how quickly the mind can turn, right? Turn something that is neutral into a threat, right? Because of the fact that we're paranoid. The brain has been trained and conditioned to be paranoid, meaning that it's looking at everything as a potential threat. If it's not a threat, not a problem. But if it is a threat, I want to have been paying attention in a way where I'll catch it, right? Which means I have to live my life all day in a state of threat. Which means I am afraid all the time. Which means I'm concerned. Now, this fear that exists all the time is something that most people don't notice, just like your breath. You don't notice your breath because it's going on all the time. If you go to pay attention to it, you notice, oh yeah, it's there, right? The same thing is true with fear. When you wake up in the morning, if you look, you'll notice there's kind of a concern there. You know what I mean? A concern about the day, even a dread, right? Even a dread, a concern about the day, a concern about the week, concern about the year, concern about your life, concern about money, concern about debt, right? Concern about all the situations in your life and so forth. Yeah, you wake up into that in the morning, right? So you wake up into this condition of stress. You wake up into this condition of concern. And this condition can be best expressed as anxiety, right? Or fear, right? So human beings are in a state of fear all the time, and they don't know it because anything that is consistent doesn't show up, just like breathing. Through the practice of meditation, we begin to become more aware and start to be aware of the fear. Start to be aware of the fear. Start to notice the fear. Start to notice when it kicks in. Start to notice how it changes our perceptions. Start to notice how it makes us behave in ways that are not realistic, right? Ways that are hurtful and cause negative consequences. So waking up is a big deal. It's not some hobby. It's not some interesting thing to get involved with. And one of the things that your personality will do in relationship to these teachings and practices, it'll make it academic. Oh, it's interesting. I'm interested in that. You know, I like that. It's interesting. It's fascinating, you know. That's a way of keeping you from the truth, right? Because if you turn this into an academic study, you won't be involved in the practice and the teachings in a way that will allow you to wake up. You'll just turn it into something that you're information. That's all it is. It's just information. Well, these practices and teachings are not just information. So I really, especially for those people who are watching this on YouTube, I really invite you to take this on as a practice that is consistent, that you give your attention and energy to because you understand what it makes possible. And I also welcome people on the YouTube channel to send me comments or questions if you have any, or ask questions about what you would like me to focus on here. Because this is a service. You know, one of the things that happens when you awaken is you discover that you have a responsibility as an awake human being to share this with other human beings. It's a natural thing, right? If you discovered the cure for cancer, would you keep it a secret? No. Well, this is exactly the same thing, right? And so that's why I do what I do. But the other thing that you come in contact with is that once you're awake, the sharing of being awake, right, keeps the awake awake. The sharing of being awake keeps the awake awake. The involvement with the activities of being awake keeps the awake awake. And you want to stay awake if you experience being awake because you know the difference it makes, right? All right, I think that's enough for one day. I hope to see you all here again, and I hope you keep meditating consistently. All right, have a good day.